Welcome to Caribbean News and Views. The governor of California has issued a statewide ban against singing in churches, while protesters have been allowed to go about unfettered in that state and elsewhere. Are there any similarities to what our Prime Minister announced recently? One church in California has decided to defy those rules. Listen to this interview.
Well, first of all and foremost, it's a First Amendment right. This is the United States of America, and the government can't intrude in worship. We stand on that amendment. In the life of a church, it's multi-generational. We've had 21 weeks with no ministry to 1,000 little children, to 1,000 university students, to junior high students, high school students, senior adults. We've had no funerals, no weddings. I can't go to the hospital. I've had to go on the phone to talk to dying people at the hospital. And finally, I started preaching in an empty auditorium. I did it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the people, without us saying anything, started coming back. And they kept coming back, and last Sunday, 3,000 of them came back. And they rejoiced, and they hugged each other, and they didn't wear masks, and they sang songs, and they understand the reality of it. I haven't had to say anything.
So we've seen the clip, and this is what is happening in California, and not only in California. There are quite a few churches that have decided to defy the government restrictions in the United States. But we're not the same. We have a different context in terms of our laws, our politics, our constitution, and how the church operates in the Caribbean. Mr. Rowe, would you tell us a difference you can see between the church in the United States, especially in California, and the Caribbean churches?
Well, you mentioned one of the issues in the situation that they face. For example, the Constitution is not the same. Also, what we see clearly, what seems to be, especially with the banning of the singing in church, is almost an impinging on the constitutional right.
In California, you mentioned they actually tried to ban singing. I don't know if California was the only state, but I know definitely California did it. No, that's an affront on the church, a part of worship. You're going to go into defiance of churches if you try to take that out of their worship. You find too that they were very selective. Some churches were not affected by some of what was being prescribed in the restrictions. Other churches were singled out and told that they were going to shut them down. So that was another issue. The third issue that came up in the US crisis with the churches is that protesters were allowed to go on, and the churches could not see the difference between the protesters in terms of the use of voice, the movement, proximity, etc., and the church. Some persons said one took place outside, one inside. Well, they were not seeing that as a major difference. And so this has caused a kind of collision between the restrictions of some states and the churches. Jamaica, we just want to look at what took place in Jamaica, right? This is the Prime Minister of Jamaica. According to the Prime Minister, the majority of established churches have been obeying the established protocols. However, he says one church has flagrantly disregarded the measures. He says the pastor recently returned from overseas and held a convention and religious services. He says religious conventions will be prohibited. And, I want to say, I want to say something here. Why can't we just let go of some traditions? Yes, he used to have a convention. Now it's a different era. Can't we express our togetherness in anything other than a convention? So Jamaica got into hot water because of that. But there's another issue now in the Jamaican church, because another church, a person who was positive for COVID, went there, was prayed for, and they were not protected. They were not following the protocols, and there was a spread of infection. Now that group was a revivalist group. Strictly speaking, it doesn't come under the umbrella organizations of most of the churches, Full Gospel, Pentecostal, etc. It's a different grouping, but still it is lumped in church, and we have to reckon with what has taken place. So what do we want to say? What two final sentences to the Jamaican churches?
All right. In light of the fact that our governments seem, for the most part, to be concerned with the welfare of the people,
Yes.
and the rules are not highly restrictive and overly restrictive, I'd say, like what we see in
Yes.
California, I'd say continue
Exactly.
to adhere to the guidelines
Right.
put down by the authorities.
Yes. Yes. So the final word is that we learn to pick our battles. And right now, I think the Caribbean Church, in all the countries so far, we can comply with the government edicts and continue to preserve our health and our well-being. The Bible says that we are to be cognizant of our neighbor. And so in this COVID time, love your neighbor, wear a mask, sanitize, and let us practice the social distancing that is required. Thank you.